for today is titled, Faith is a Mental Attitude. Faith is a mental attitude. Now, I remind myself daily and often that faith is the strength of the soul and lost is the person without it. And in this statement of profound truth comes the instantaneous realization that my faith is the only true power that I possess. And this realization of the power of faith is the dominion and authority over all that concerns me. This does not mean that faith in itself can ensure a carefree life, as we must always be conscious of how our faith is directed. We must tell ourselves, for we are the only one we must convince, that God, infinite spirit, intelligence, and power, is always working with us by working as a correspondent to that which we have faith in. It is the corresponding action of God intelligence that makes all things possible for those who believe. And we know we can take those words of the mastermind Jesus from the Gospel of Luke, that which seems impossible for mankind is possible with God. But it takes faith. It takes faith to realize that everything is always working for our good. There is no God that withholds from us. There is no energy that fails to demonstrate the good for us that we accept for ourselves. But it's up to us to believe that this is so. It's up to us to believe, just as Jesus did, that it's the Father's good pleasure to give to you. Now, what does that mean? It means to give to us what we require for our life. What I may require to have a day that's filled with joy and happiness and peace of mind may be completely different than what it is that you require to have that same thing happen for you. So many people deal with all manner of issues that are unique to them, and everyone has a unique idea of what it is that's going on in their life. So often people will tell me, I know that I don't have the faith. Well, we do have all the faith we require, but it's up to us to take it into our mind. It's faith as a mental attitude means that we must bring faith into our mind. Faith is the strength of my soul, and so I was lost, but now I'm found. Just start thinking about what it is that you find that energy within you that's greater, that intelligence within you that's greater, that power within you that's greater than anything you've experienced before, and what it means to your life. That we can move through whatever it is that we can move through. We can enjoy the greater things still that's ours to experience, ours to do, ours to have. But it takes faith. Faith is the strength of the soul. So let our soul, which is another word for consciousness, take into it an acceptance of a greater abundance health and wealth and success and prosperity and kindness and love for ourselves and for each other. Let's take that into our consciousness and realize it's God working through our life, always in the nature of God, which is always intelligence, always power, and always spirit. So let's look at these words from the American mystic Ernest Holmes, and this is from his book, This Thing Called You. He tells us faith is most certainly a mental attitude. When a certain man came to Jesus and said, Lord, I believe, he was but showing how human we all are, how human you are, how human everyone is. From the inspiration of his hope and the enthusiasm of the occasion, standing in the light of one whose wick of life was ever kept trimmed and burning, feeling the warmth and color of its eternal glow, he exclaimed, I believe. This was a simple, sincere, and enthusiastic response to the consciousness of one who had faith. But no sooner had he exclaimed, I believe, out of the enthusiasm of his will to believe, than old thought patterns arose to block his faith, and he said, help thou mine unbelief. Help thou mine unbelief. And how often do we find ourselves in the same situation? You know, we go to a church or a synagogue or a temple, and we hear a sermon or a message or a service that really inspires us and makes us feel like we can conquer all things in our life and stand in the triumphant glory of God in whatever it is that we do. And then all of a sudden, something happens and we lose sight of that faith. We lose sight of that inspiration, and we go back to that feeling that somehow maybe we don't have the faith, maybe we don't have enough faith. So often we feel those things happening to us. I can remember one of my first lectures at a church was at a church in Roanoke Park, California, which is 40-some miles, I think it is, from San Francisco. And I remember, all the enthusiasm of the crowd and all the people standing up and clapping and all that. And I said, I hope each and every one of you carries this enthusiasm with you every day, even when you go out and somebody cuts you off in traffic on the way home, that you can still stay in that glow of the knowledge and the knowing and the understanding and the realization that God is always with you, that God is always working for your good, so you don't get distracted by the things that happen to us in the material and the physical world. So let's go back to Ernest Holmes. He says, now this man was not a weak character. He was not a weak character. He was just a human being on the same quest in which all humanity is engaged. He was but showing that faith is more than an objective statement, that perfect faith cannot exist while there are subjective contradictions that deny the affirmation of the lips. It is only when the intellect is no longer obstructed by negative emotional reactions arising out of the experiences of doubt and fear that the word of the mouth can immediately bear fruit. There is nothing in this thought to be discouraged about, for the very fact that thoughts are things also carries with it this divine connotation that the thinker can change our thoughts, that we really are the master of our fate. You are the thinker. You are the creator of thought patterns, so you are the master of your fate. So in other words, we must be willing to give our time to focus on what it is that we think about. What do we think about all day long? How is our thinking distracted from the world in which we live? How much of what we think about is conditioned by the news media that we listen to, or the politicians that we listen to, or the religious leaders that we listen to? Everybody has an agenda. I don't care who they are. But we must focus on our own personal agenda. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the politicians say, the religious leaders say. It doesn't matter even what our friends and neighbors say. We are the one that must live our life in the thoughts that we think. We are the ones that must live our life in the thoughts that we think and experience those thoughts that we think in all things that concern us. If we think negative things, if we think about things that diminish us or diminish the people around us, then we're going to see some diminishment of something in our life. It may be our health, it may be our wealth, it may be our success in our career, it may be our creative expression, it may be in our relationships, whatever it may be, we are going to see and realize and experience a diminishment. But if we hold to the truth that God is always present, that God is within all things, that all things are working to the good, even when people don't realize that that's so, then we don't get distracted, we don't get emotional, or we don't get attached to the things that are going on around us, and we start seeing our way clear to live the good life, the joyful life, the wonderful life. But it's up to us to take it into our mind that this is so. It's up to us to believe, to say, I believe. I believe. That I within me that's connected to that infinite I, which is God. I believe. I believe and I receive. I believe and I accept. I believe and I ask and I claim the good that is mine. So no one can think for us, so no one can change the patterns of our thoughts but ourselves. Most of us do not often stop and think about what the patterns of our thoughts are creating. Many people are unconscious of their own negative thinking, or they're dwelling on the past negative experiences or seeming failures. Even those who say they know that our thoughts create our experiences oftentimes listen to others who speak of negative things or speak negatively about others. We hear, but we don't really listen to the truth that we know, and allow the noise and the nonsense of the world to fill our mind with contradictions, to allow the noise and the nonsense of the world to fill our mind with contradictions. It's up to us to to realize that we are in charge of our life. This past week we did a whole series on the 40 powerful spiritual phrases that can change the quality of your life, called Thought Conditioners by the great Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And listen to these words. He said, over the years I noticed that certain passages from the Scripture had a particularly potent effect on human beings. But he's telling us that for this to be true, we have to listen and hear what the words are telling us. We have to take into our mind that those things are the truth for us. And not just the truth that's out in the world, that it's the truth for us personally. And if we're going to personally experience them as the truth, then we must take it into our mind as the truth for us. We can be transformed in the Spirit very easily by just recognizing that the Spirit is present. Once again, we recognize that gravity is present even though we can't see it. We recognize that the air that we breathe is present even though we can't see it. We can't draw a picture of it. We can't draw a picture of gravity, but we know they are real. So we must go that next step, that leap of faith that believes that God is closer to us than breathing, near than hands and feet, pressing against us, flowing through us, above us, below us, always available to us to energize our intellect with the right ideas, to energize our spirit with the radiance of God's Spirit, to revitalize our health, and so that we feel that God is our health and we can't be sick, and we don't let anything of the world take power over our health. We turn to God, depend on God for everything. So let's look at these words from Charles Fillmore, who's a co-founder of the Practical Christianity movement. And he wrote this among many other things about faith. He says, like the other faculties, faith has a center through which it expresses outwardly its spiritual powers. Physiologists call this center the pineal gland, and they locate it in the upper brain. By meditation, mankind lights up the inner mind and receives more than we can put into words. Only those who have strengthened their interior faculties can appreciate the wonderful, undeveloped possibilities in mankind. The physiologist sees the faculties as brain cells. The psychologist views them as thought combinations. But the spiritually minded beholds them as pure ideas, unrelated, free, and all potential. Faith can be extended in consciousness in every direction. In other words, we can extend it into our health, into our wealth, into our prosperity, into our success, into our creative ideas, into our relationships. Faith can be extended in consciousness in every direction. It will accomplish wonderful things if quickened and allowed free expression in its native realm. When Jesus said, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, and they thought at that time in the world that the mustard seed was the smallest seed on the planet, although it wasn't, you shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. He referred to faith working in spiritual substance. Such results are possible only to the faith that cooperates with the creative law. Where faith is centered in other things, the results are not worthy to mention. People have named them luck and accident and chance and the like. Such charms seem to work for a little while, then suddenly change. So it is evident that they are not under any enduring law. That's from the great Charles Fillmore. Now, this creative law that Charles Fillmore refers to is always for the expansion of universal good, and every truly good thing that we desire for ourselves, once demonstrated, results in the good for all. As our faith works through spiritual substance, that is, the invisible intelligence and energy that is infinite and formless, until formed with the power of faith, all things come together to create the greatest good we can imagine and accept for ourselves. And we can take the words of the Mastermind Jesus to mean that we are to stop dwelling on the molehills and focus our mind on our potential to move mountains. In other words, think as big as you can, conceive of God, infinite intelligence, capable of working out in your life. This is the mental attitude we want to bring into our mind every day. Jesus wasn't telling us to try to move a mountain. He was just telling us to go beyond our previous thought patterns, go beyond our previous experiences, go beyond our previous history, and start making a new history, start making a new life story of success and happiness and health and joy and peace of mind and all the things that bring us into that feeling that we are living in our self-created kingdom of God or kingdom of good. So if we're going to find the kingdom of God within us, as Jesus said we must, because it's not low here or low there, then we must use our faith. And remind yourself as I do every day, and say this to yourself a few times every day, and you'll see it immediately has an impact on your consciousness, on your spirit, on your mental attitude. Faith is the strength of my soul. Faith is the strength of my soul. And keep that into your mind, because we know faith is the strength of the soul, and lost is the person without it, and we don't want to be lost. We don't want to be lost. We don't want to be lost to the good, lost to the idea of God working for us and working through us and creating for us a good that will make us feel so enthusiastic about life. Faith is the strength of my soul. Faith, my faith. What do I have faith in? I have faith in the good. Why? Because God is the all good. I have faith in the power of God because God is all power. I have faith in the intelligence of God because God is all-knowing intelligence. So if I want to know the answer, the solution, I must turn to God, because in God is the answer, is the solution. If I want to overcome something and I feel a little weak or I feel a little shaky about it, I want to turn to God because I need that power of God to strengthen me. Just as the Apostle tells us, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me, Christ being that part of God's nature within mankind, part of God's intelligence, part of God's power, part of God's spirit. So we take that into our mind as the truth for us, and we believe it by telling ourselves, this is what I believe. This is what I believe to be true about me. And we tell ourselves over and over and over and over, even today, for our consciousness to be fully convinced that this is the truth for me, and all the workings of the Spirit, all the workings of the intelligence, all the workings of the power of God through love and law will bring forth into our life experience that's correspondent to that which we believe to be true. But we must take it into our mind. It's the truth. That's why faith is a mental attitude. We must plant the seed of faith in our mind, a seed that's greater than a mustard seed for most of us, in order to have that overcoming, to have that move through whatever it is that we must move through in order to enjoy this thing called, we all have the potential. We all have the ability. But we must convince ourselves sometimes that that potential and that ability cannot be diminished by anything in the world around us, that it is our inner connection with God. It is inherent within us. It's inherent within us because we are created in the nature of God. So let's take that into our mind, and let's start to accept it in a greater way. Let's go back to those words of the great American mystic Ernest Holmes from his book, This Thing Called You, because this is something that we all need to think about and we all need to take into our mind so that we don't get discouraged when our faith is shaken a little bit. He writes, faith is most certainly a mental attitude. When a certain man came to Jesus and said, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief, he was but showing how human we all are, how human you are, how human everyone is. From the inspiration of his hope and the enthusiasm of the occasion, standing in the light of one whose wick of life was ever kept trimmed and burning, feeling the warmth and color of its eternal glow, he exclaimed, I believe, I believe. This was a simple, sincere, and enthusiastic response to the consciousness of one who had faith. But no sooner had he exclaimed, "I believe," than out of the enthusiasm of his will to believe, then old thought patterns arose to block his faith, and he said, "Help thou mine unbelief. Help thou mine unbelief." Now we know that before Jesus healed anyone, he says, "Do you believe? Do you believe?" And we know the ones that he healed said they believed, but we don't know how long they held on to that knowingness, that belief that they felt in that moment, that joyous reception of God in their heart, their mind, and their soul, God's spirit, God's intelligence, God's power to heal them and bless them and prosper them. We don't know how long, but we do know that we can always refresh our mind. We can always reaffirm the things that we believe. We can always take into our mind that we have the ability, we have the power, because God is available to us, that God, the great unseen presence, intelligence, and spirit that's always seeking to realize the greater through us, is always available. So Ernest Holmes tells us, now this man was not a weak character. He was just a human being on the same quest in which all humanity is engaged. He was but showing that faith is more than an objective statement, that perfect faith cannot exist while there are subjective contradictions that deny the affirmation of the lips. So we must remind ourselves that we are the thinker. We are the creator of our thought patterns. We are the master of our faith. And so let's take into our mind today that the truth is, faith is a mental attitude, and it's a mental attitude that we will carry with us throughout this day and all the days to come, as we remind ourselves that faith is the strength of my soul, and I am never lost without it. I am never lost without it. And so it is.